Welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast, where we talk about the struggles and celebrations that leaders and entrepreneurs experience on their journey to success. I'm your host, Kristina, and I'm passionate about helping you achieve massive amounts of success at work and at home. We'll talk about all things people and organizational wellness, share relatable stories, and feature insightful guests because quality people and processes are at the heart of every success story. Ready to learn, grow, and have fun? Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast. I'm your host, Kristina Schmitt. I have a fun and interesting guest to bring on today to share a bit about business, starting your business up, and some of the things you bump into, whether it's personal trials or it's business woes, whatever it might be. But I'm really excited to introduce you to Joe Coleman. So Joe is the founder and director of audio production at Saint Kolbe Studios. So Joe, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. As soon as we started recording, they started doing workout in the hallway. So I hope that doesn't make it into the mic.
I can't hear it.
Okay.
So you're good.
It's like on cue, like as soon as you started your intro. It was incredible.
Always. Yeah. I know. They're about to start doing work on my street. So I'm like, what do I need? How long is that going to affect me for? I love it. Well, good. Well, so Joe, tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you live, family, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, I am. So I'm in East Texas. I'm in a city called Tyler, a couple hours from Dallas. Tyler had some fame in the Catholic world when our bishop got canned by the now late, God rest his soul, Pope Francis. But we're back to, being small and quiet and forgotten, which I honestly prefer. I don't mind it being a little slow around here. That was a whole lot going on.
But I can imagine.
My family moved here a few years ago, then didn't plan to stay, but stuck it out anyway. And now my wife and I have been married almost exactly a year at this point. And, we've got a baby on the way in mid-June. So it seems I'm here at least for the foreseeable future.
All right.
My parents are out here too, which is great. And her family's nearby as well. Yeah, we're enjoying a slower pace of life in East Texas. That's the personal end, I suppose. Personal end is short because most of my life these days is just working on Saint Kolbe Studios. It is an all-encompassing endeavor, as most startup business ventures are. So I get a little break, sort of calm before the storm, because once the baby hits, I will have zero extra time, which fine by me. I have too much free time as it is. I don't need any of it. I got, I like to do things. I get bored. So I think the baby would be good for that. I hear they take up some of your time. So
a little bit. Like I seriously question. I have no idea how I thought I was busy before. I used to be like, I'm so busy. And I'm like, I don't know what I was doing with my time.
No, you're right. I think about, I think back, when I was in college and being like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I do what I do. I'm so busy. And now I look at it like life was so easy.
I know.
Life was so much easier. And I imagine a year from now, I'm going to do the same thing, back to today. Like life was so easy.
Mm-hmm.
Life was just so much easier. So I imagine you never get less busy. You just get better at dealing with it. So hopefully we get better at dealing with it.
It just looks different at every stage. Like you've got the newborn, I don't sleep stage. Then you've got the toddler. They're just always there with questions stage. In school, and then it gets nuts. Well, congratulations on two things: on recent marriage and almost baby. So well, congrats on that. That is very exciting.
Thank you.
All right, so can you tell us a little bit about your business and kind of like how did you get to running what do you do at Kolbe, and then how did you get to where you are?
Yeah, sure. So Saint Kolbe Studios is an audio production agency primarily for Catholic business owners and solo creators. So we work, what that means is functionally we work in the for-profit world. Not that we don't work with nonprofits and ministries and things like that, but our focus is primarily business owners. And, I'd lump solo creators doing, your own 1099 thing, just into that category. We found that there are plenty of good producers out there and marketing agencies and, production agencies who work with, nonprofits, NGOs, apostolates, ministries, these things. But the for-profit world, especially kind of in the faith-based sphere, was really lacking. I mean, there are a handful out there who do similar kind of adjacent things to what we do, but there really isn't anyone doing what we do, like precisely. And in that, we're an audio production agency that works primarily, first and foremost with business owners, solo creators, people who don't run a ministry. And I'd say audio as opposed to podcast, mostly because the bulk of it is podcast. We of course, this is kind of a homer take, but we recommend that businesses have a podcast. There's a lot of good that can come from that. But that also extends to things like audiobooks as well as recorded live events. Like we'll do lectures. Like, you give a lecture, you give a talk, whatever, you record it. You want to put it up as a podcast, put it up on Spotify, things like that.
Yeah.
We also handled that as well. The Saint Kolbe Studios itself came from, I started my career in broadcast radio. I was an on-air host back in 2019. This was my first year producing. I was an on-air host and a producer and a writer at a small station in Western Alaska, KNOM Radio, oldest Catholic radio station in the U.S. So I got to cut my teeth there in a very small studio, which was a ton of fun. I fell in love with the process of recording and producing audio, and I worked in it to some degree, mostly on the side for a number of years after that. But within the last year, I went full time. I had pretty much stopped doing content writing. That was the majority of my freelancing career before this, where I was doing, travel and outdoor writing primarily with some podcasts on the side. But, within the last year, I felt like it was time to make the leap. Out here in Tyler, I had met a number of people who have adjacent skills in, video and graphic design and things like that. So I went, I've got a pretty good book of, potential subcontractors, employees, whatever it ends up being right here in, the city I live in. This is a unique opportunity. I think there might be something here. And over the preceding or the following 12 months or so, we built Saint Kolbe Studios into what it is today. And we're all paying the bills. We haven't starved yet. So far it's a success, which is just exciting to say.
It's funny, like as a business owner, it's like at some point you're like, yes, this is working. But up until then, you're kind of like, bills are getting covered.
Thank God my wife had a job for enough of my wife. She actually just quit her job. Wednesday was her last day.
Oh, wow.
And so, she's going to be, God willing, the creek don't rise. It's going to be, staying at home once the baby comes. If we run out of money, she'll have to go back to work. You can't fix that one. But assuming we can make it, she'll be back. Just staying home with the kid. But yeah, having her working, I think she's probably doing 25, 30 hours a week. She went down a little bit once we first got married. Having her paycheck was very helpful to cover the difference in the early days. Like I quickly made enough money where I could pay most of the bills just immediately. Like we weren't dipping into savings, but there was definitely a gap that had to be covered. Her income was very helpful back then.
Yes. So what was that transition for you to go from saying I'm going to do this full time and we're like the Lord will provide or whatever? What was that like?
Yeah, it was a lot. It was definitely months of going, should I even do this? Like, is this something that's even feasible? Like, I think it is, and I feel like it is, but I can't quite say why, because it makes some sense on paper, but it's not like an absolute obvious home run. So it was a lot of prayer of should I do this? Should I was working for somebody else at the time. I was like, do I stick it out here or do I find a job that, I like better? I was working in a place, good place, good people, but it just, the work wasn't, for me. I didn't find it terribly fulfilling. So it was like, all right, do I take this risk? Do I not? And I sat on that one for months. And I was like, all right, I think I'm going to do it. It seems like this is what I should do. God, if you don't want me to do it, that's fine. But you have to shut this thing down. And if you do, fantastic. I'll listen to you. No problem. But it seems to me as though I should do this. If I'm reading you wrong, I need you to tell me. I need you to be very clear because I'm dumb. I don't know what I'm doing. This just seems correct. You have to hit me. And that never happened. And we're now doing enough business that, we cover the bills and we're making a small profit. So it can't have been that bad of an idea. But it was an interesting process in that it should have been nerve-wracking, but it never really was. My biggest thing, and I don't know if other business owners can relate to this, but my biggest thing was, I think I can do this. I feel like I should be really worried about doing this, but I'm not. And that seems wrong. Like, it seems like I should be really nervous about making this endeavor. I'm not. Am I just not taking this seriously enough? Am I completely naive? And I think there's some amount of just hopeful optimism and naivety that's just helpful if you want to run your own endeavor. But I'm like, do I have too much of this? Like, am I just missing a major problem that's going to be right down the line?
Yeah.
And the almost the most unnerving thing was the fact that I wasn't nervous, which it sounds weird and counterintuitive, but I think a lot of your listeners can probably relate to this to some
Yeah.
degree of I should be concerned that this won't work, but I'm not. Why? So that was definitely the biggest kind of oddity in the transition to get here.
Yeah, I had a really similar with mine. I walked away from a paying role before to jump in to do leadership training because I was like, yes, this feels right. This feels like what I should be doing. And it's actually Easter is kind of a good kind of anniversary for me having to do this because I think I came across this opportunity to kind of leap at sometime during Lent. I was like, I'm not going to make a choice until Easter. And so I made sure I did that. So it's kind of like a renewal, I guess, somewhat of an anniversary for me to be in the Easter season now. And kind of where I'm at. But I had the same thing where I didn't have that fear. And I think that when you're called to do something, when you've been given the will, you've been given the talent and the opportunity, and
no, you're right.
I can't say no.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that gave me comfort along the line is I had gotten married not that long before it at that time, and I kind of felt the same thing when I was dating my then girlfriend, now wife, where it was just like, okay, yeah, I just feel like I should do this, and that mean cards on the table. Like, we got engaged. We dated for 3 months and got engaged.
Wow.
6 months later, we were married. We had known in fairness, we had known each other for a good while, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 months, before we ever started dating. So we spent enough time around each other where it wasn't as quick as it sounds. But it was one of those things, once we, made the decision to start dating, it went quick. It just made sense. And there was really no point where I went, well, should we get married? Should we not get married? Should we discern this more? I was like, no, this just makes sense. I think I'll just do that. This clearly seems to work. If it wasn't supposed to, something had gone wrong by now. So I might as well just ride this one out.
There you go.
My own opinions are terrible. I don't know anything. God knows way more than I do. I might as well just listen. And that one has clearly worked out. So the fact that the process went a similar way to up until that, well, still the most significant decision I've made in my life was a small comfort, even though I think I should be more concerned. I was like, I've seen this before. It's worked out. I think it's going to be fine. And, so far, so good.
Yeah. Yeah. There is a thing you have to see what does it normally look like when you hear a call from God or when you feel that pull from him to do something. And if it's, hey, I've seen this before.
Yeah. I get the concept. I've seen the wireframe of this one before. I think
exactly. I'm like, okay, maybe someday we'll believe it, but stop questioning yourselves. Awesome. So why did you name it Saint Kolbe?
Yeah, Saint Kolbe, among other things, is a patron saint of communications. He was on radio. He had a newspaper that has a Polish name that I still cannot pronounce, which is still in circulation to this day. It's the periodical that he started still exists, and he's certainly, objectively a great saint of the modern era on his own merit. But he has a lot of overlap in the world of both written and audio communications. And I'd found that out truthfully at this point, I have no idea when I found it out. Just somewhere along the line, I went, okay, I was brainstorming ideas and I was like, look, we're going to go the faith-based route. And I don't want people to have to squint and try to figure out, what our deal is. So, I kind of wanted on the masthead. And truthfully, Saint Kolbe Studios was just one of the catchier potential names that I'd written down. And then I went, all right, well, this sounds cool. Does it work? And I did a little deep dive and I went, oh, great. This works. Fantastic. Yeah. So, definitely unknown or underknown, at least, patron saint of communications, Saint Kolbe.
Yeah, I don't think I knew that. I knew, obviously the World War II connection. I knew that whole thing, the Immaculata, all that, but I never thought about the communication part. So very cool. Yeah. Well, so when you're working with clients, what does that client experience look like for you? So how do they come, what problems do they normally have that you're trying to solve for them? And then how do you help them create this thing they want to create?
Yeah. the classic sort of agency answer is it depends. And
Of course.
it depends. But for the most part, at least the bulk of clients that come in the door, or even just potential leads that come in, look like one of two things. Option one is I have a podcast, I've got some traction, it's not bad, but either it's taking up too much of my time, or I don't quite have the skills to make it look and sound great. Like, it's okay, but I don't have those skills, and it's not, the whole comparative advantage of it doesn't really work out for me to learn those skills. I want to go check some prices, see what it would cost to get it produced for me. That's option one is, the person who already has a podcast and either needs the time or needs an improvement in the quality of the production. The second, business owner comes in, goes, hey, everyone's got a podcast these days. I feel like I should have one. Do you think I should have one? And, usually I say yes. Really, have I said every once in a while, I go, what, I don't think that audio is for you. But usually I'll be like, yeah, you should have one. I turned down one unnamed publishing company who was asking about, recording audio books and things like that. And I went, yeah, you can absolutely do that. But they wanted to record them, kind of in a home setup, and it was going to be not the most professional. And I went, look, I'll take your money for this. I'll produce these for you, but I won't feel great about it. So here's why I don't think you should do this. And if you want to, I will, and I'll make it the best I can. But I don't think you should do this. So rarely do we turn people down, because usually it's something that does fit into your marketing strategy really well. But every once in a while, we tell, hey, don't start a podcast. You maybe down the line, but not yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, the second one is somebody wants a podcast. They see the value of it. They've seen it work for other people, and they go, well, what does it take? I don't know the first thing about it. Mostly people are kind of overwhelmed with the amount of options when it comes to gear. Microphone, do I use an audio interface? Do I use a USB? What kind of camera do I need? Where do I record? Sound panels, what are those? All the sort of gadgets and things that come with podcasting. There are so many options on the market, which is great because the barrier to entry is lowered, but it's a paralysis of choice now. There are so many options that people don't even know where to start. It's biting into a wall. And so they come to us and they go, okay, what do I need to start? How often should I upload? Where do I upload? What software do I use? How does it get onto the internet? How does that work? How do I know, who I'm podcasting to? How do I know how often to upload? All the basics. And so we sort of start from square one, build it up, and then let them go from there. So, it does depend, but the majority of people coming in our door are one of those two.
Okay, yeah, I was definitely one of those. When I started my podcast, I was like, where do I put it? How does it get there? But then I saw this meme. This is such a terrible motivator, but it was, your first podcast will be bad. I'm like, you're absolutely right. 100%. I recorded my first one with my computer microphone, my computer camera, standing in my living room. It was hilariously bad.
Oh, yeah. That's the biggest thing I think holding people back from not even just podcasts, but, creating video content or really just posting things on social media, writing things on a blog, whatever it is. It's your first one's going to suck. It's going to be bad. And you just need to deal with that. Your first 5 are probably going to be bad. Your first 10 are going to be okay. And then after that, they're going to get better and better, but nobody's going to see your first 5 anyway. It's fine. They're not going to take off unless you have a ton of money behind you and an established brand. And then sure, they'll take off, but you'll also have good gear, so it doesn't matter. It'll be just fine. Yeah, I mean, I always remind people hey, you have to just power through the first few. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to be great, but on the back end of that is something that's going to be really useful to you. So you just have to get through it.
Yes, and I think sometimes entrepreneurs will fall. Maybe it's one of two camps, but it's either they're really good at just try it, just do something action focused, or they get stuck. And maybe these are people that never become entrepreneurs, but maybe it's that analysis paralysis. I have a fear, but sometimes it's worth doing it badly the first time. Sometimes it's get the reps, right? Just do it once and see what happens. I don't know your thoughts on that.
Chesterton or C.S. Lewis, there's some quote of anything that's worth doing is worth doing badly. And whoever said that.
I don't know who said it either, but I've heard it.
I'm not as well read as I pretend to be on podcasts, but whoever said that, it's right. Yeah, anything worth doing is worth doing badly because that's where you have to start. Unless you're a savant, it's immediately going to be bad, and that's fine. You got to sort of holster your pride and move through your first few, and then it'll get better.
Exactly. It's just part of growing.
Yeah.
I was literally just talking about this. Was the voice memo I was sending when you hopped on. Dr. Becky Kennedy is like a parenting coach, and she talks about the space between. So like there's unknowing and knowing. Mm-hmm. And that space in between is ugly and messy and feels awful. Mm-hmm. But once you're through it, you're good. But we build resilience by being able to hang out in that ugly, messy space in the learning zone. And so starting something new is like that. Starting a new habit is like that.
Yeah.
And starting a business is obviously like that. You go from, oh, maybe I should be more scared to do this, to we're paying the bills. So eventually, maybe we'll get to that other spot, but I don't know. I don't know if you get there or not.
Yeah.
There's got to be some milestone to hit.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about like what motivated you to do this for Catholic companies, Catholic businesses versus jumping into the secular? Because in theory, there's a lot more people. Certainly. But why focus here?
Yeah, two main reasons. One, less competition, frankly. There are a couple of agencies out there, that we know people at, and they're, great people. But they do something similar, but they don't quite do what we do. Mm-hmm. So they're competitors to some degree. Like, there's overlap in the Venn diagram, but they're not, like one-to-one direct competitors. So kind of, it was an open sort of unserved or at least underserved niche, and that really helped. So, ease of entry is the first one. The other one, I think it made it simpler to not work with people who don't share our fundamental values. So what we are is, yes, we are primarily for Catholic business owners and solo creators. But, if you dig into our website under FAQs, like we've got a thing of, does my business have to be Catholic? And it's no, actually, no, it doesn't. Nor do you. Really, what it means is we reserve the right to not work with people we fundamentally disagree with. And that's a tough thing, especially in the creative world. Like if I'm selling you a microphone, on the back end, like what you say through it just isn't my responsibility. And you could make an argument, like if I knew you were going to make a satanic podcast and I sell you a microphone, I'm culpable. And I'm open to the argument. Maybe that's true. But outside of that extreme, those sort of transactions are pretty black and white. I don't know what you're doing with it. And whatever you're doing with it overwhelmingly likely is, at worst, neutral. Maybe it's bad content, but it's not evil or immoral or anything like that. But when it comes to the creative world, it's different. And the industry I'm in is certainly less creative than somebody who takes something from nothing and builds, like somebody who designs, somebody who writes. Like we are less creative and a little more technical in that we're doing production on something that already exists. And you can get plenty creative within those boundaries, but there's still an upper limit on your creativity. That said, it's really difficult to build something, to fix something, tweak something that like you just do not agree with. It's and I've done it when I wrote for as a freelancer at an agency. Both, I've taken on clients where I'm like, I don't think this is immoral, but I really don't feel good about it. So, certainly this isn't me judging anybody who works in that field and goes, hey, like, I don't like it, but I got to, everybody's got a mortgage. I get it. I understand. And it was a little easier to justify when I was working for somebody else. I'm like, this just isn't my thing. I can live with it. But now that I have my own deal, I'm like, I don't think I, in good faith, could do this. Like, if I have to get up every day and do work I, at best, don't believe in but tolerate, like I'm going to be miserable. I've done it before. I know myself. Some people are better at it. God bless them. They're more resilient than I am, but I can't do it. In the creative world, it's really tough to deal in things you just fundamentally oppose. So niching down in this, certainly it limits our options, and it's very enticing to kind of go out of the bubble and chase clients other places. But one, I don't want to roll the dice on objectionable content, and two, once we kind of step out of our niche, we are just in a much bigger field. There's much more established players. We then have to compete on price, probably, or have the ultimate customer experience. And I'm no longer interested in competing on price. We're certainly not the most expensive out by any means, but we are not cheap. And I'm very upfront about that. When I was a freelancer, I worked with cheap clients, as freelancers start out doing almost always. And anyone who's done this understands what I'm about to say. It's brutal. It's so bad. It is. There are some good cheap clients out there, certainly people who understand what their budget is and they don't want to buy champagne with beer money. But, for one of them, there's 20 bad ones. And so if we go outside of our niche, we have to compete on price.
Yeah.
And I'm not interested in doing that ever again. If I could avoid it. If I have to, I have to. But yeah, it was fundamentally just partially it was practical. This is get in where you fit in. And also it was just like a philosophical opposition to doing creative work I don't believe in, because I knew I was going to be miserable. And luckily, we found kind of a nice little intersection here I get to work in the business world, I'm a big believer in for-profits. I've on the record had some disparaging comments about nonprofits. They're not all bad, but plenty of them are. If you run a for-profit business badly, it falls apart. If you run a nonprofit badly, it may fall apart, but you can get bailed out. And so I'm a big believer in, business principles applied ethically. And I think for-profit businesses and Catholic teachings aren't inherently in conflict. They can be, they have the opportunity to be, but they aren't by default. So it was kind of this perfect intersection of the thing that I really believe in and the thing I do well. I can make money on this, and I could do it at a scale where I can help the people around me who do video well and do graphics well. So it was something I could never figure out myself. God sort of just threw it in my lap and then went do something with this. So it's a good intersection to be at. It's exciting.
It is, and it's so beautiful to be able to stay true to your own values, especially. Well, you have to. And
certainly
understanding that part for yourself, whether entrepreneur or leader, but understanding where your core values are is so critical to defining the work that you do. Yeah, and it's great that you've had the confidence to continue to do that, and you're seeing the success, you're seeing the fruits of staying in that. And there is something about niching down. Everyone talks about niching down to whatever it is, right? And the niche is Catholic. I've done Catholic leader courses myself, and there's that freedom, that ability to, that you're working with people that have the same values. With what I do, I bring prayer into that training, which is just to me, my journey has been huge about my faith, deepening my faith and fully understanding myself better so that I can run my own business and do it well and help clients better. So it's part of that healing journey for a leader as well, and for entrepreneurs as well.
Yeah. And it's also, I thought a lot about this. We actually, this is going to sound tough, but we actually have an obligation to help the faithful before others. And if we can make money exclusively helping the faithful, I think we ought to. Now, for most people, you just can't do that. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But we are able to. So we have an obligation to see if we can make it work. And if we can't make it work, and we have to extend to people who don't share our values, again, perfectly fine. But for those of us in the position where we can make money improving the lives of our fellow Catholics or our fellow Christians even, I really believe we have an obligation to see if we can at least try it. And if you can't, there's no moral harm in you failing at running a business. But I think you really have an obligation to try.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. I like that. All right. Well, Joe, thank you so much for coming on today. Before we close out, is there anything exciting coming up in your world right now, or other than a baby coming in 2 months?
Yeah, we are. That is certainly the biggest thing. Yeah, Saint Kolbe Studios is running a little promo right now. We're doing consultation work. We're doing an hour consult on existing podcasts. It's $150 for the hour. Should you desire, or should you want to hire us on after that, we credit the $150 towards your first episode. So it'll come out for free, and all come out in the wash should you want to go that route. But we are, we're just trying to ultimately improve the quality of podcasts in the Catholic world. There's plenty of great ones out there, and there's a lot of ones that could be great with a bit of tailoring. So we're offering our services. That's the politic way to say it. We're offering our services on that front. So yeah, it's $150 for the hour consult. Should you want to hire us on in continuing, we'll credit it towards your first one. And SaintKolbeStudios.com is is the way to find us, find out more about that. Saint Kolbe Studios, all spelled out. Saint is not abbreviated, though. If you type it in, we've got a redirect, so it'll go all into the same place anyway.
All right. Well, awesome. So definitely take advantage of that if that is something that you're looking to have your podcast looked at. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Joe. And thank you to the listeners. It has been great sharing this message with you. And, go check Joe out if you've got a podcast or you're thinking about a podcast or any kind of audio thing that's coming up. So awesome. Thank you so much. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Business Building Blocks podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Business Building Blocks podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. If you found value in our conversation, please leave a quick review, like, or share. It helps us reach more amazing listeners like you. For more resources and insights, visit KristinaSchmitt.ca, where you can find tools and support to empower your leadership journey. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.